We made it through that one.
Yeah, but look what it cost.
At least we still have the tank.
July 16, 1944. Normandy, France. 3 German Panther tanks, 60 tons of armored death each, lurk behind a tree line 800 yards away. Inside the American Sherman, in the mood. Staff Sergeant Lafayette Poole doesn't flinch. He's a cotton farmer from Texas who's never been to war school. But in the next 4 minutes, he'll prove something the textbooks never taught, that a man who reads wind over wheat fields can read death in steel forests. And tonight, 3 Panther crews won't go home. This is the story of the deadliest tank commander America never celebrated, a quiet farmer who became the silent reaper of the Third Reich's armor, destroying more enemy tanks than any Allied soldier in history. Not because he was fearless, but because he understood something simple in war. As in farming, you harvest before the storm comes. December 3, 1941. 4 days before Pearl Harbor. The Army recruiting station in Dallas, Texas smells like cigarette smoke and desperation. 21-year-old Lafayette Green Poole stands in line between 2 brothers arguing about which branch pays better. He doesn't join their conversation. He's thinking about his father's cotton farm back in Farmersville, 7 miles northeast, and how the land looks different when you know you're leaving it. The recruiting sergeant barely looks up. Name? Lafayette Green Poole. They call me War Daddy. The sergeant's pen stops mid-scratch. They call you what? War Daddy. It's a nickname, sir. The sergeant smirks. Kid, you ever even held a gun? Poole's jaw tightens. Every day since I was 8. Hunted rabbits, deer, coyotes when they came for the chickens. My daddy taught me you don't aim where the animal is. You aim where it's going to be. The sergeant stamps the paper. Well, War Daddy, the Army doesn't hunt rabbits. Report to Fort Knox, Kentucky in 2 weeks. Tank destroyer training. Poole nods once. He doesn't smile. He doesn't salute. He just walks out into the Texas heat, gets in his truck, and drives 7 miles back to the farm, where his wife Geneva is hanging laundry on a wire between 2 oak trees. She sees his face and knows. When? She asks. 2 weeks. She doesn't cry. Farm wives don't. Then we've got 2 weeks to remember what matters. And they do. They walk the property at dawn. They sit on the porch at dusk. They don't talk about war because neither of them knows what war really is yet. But Poole knows land. He knows how to read the sky for storms, how to judge soil quality by smell, how to track animals through high grass by watching where the wind moves wrong. He doesn't know it yet, but these skills born from poverty, sharpened by necessity, will make him the most lethal tank commander in American history. Fort Knox, Kentucky. January 1942. The training ground is frozen mud and screaming instructors. 200 men stand in formation while Sergeant First Class Raymond Iron Ray McKinney walks the line like a man inspecting cattle. He stops in front of Poole. You, farmer boy, what's your name? Poole Sergeant, Lafayette Poole. Lafayette. McKinney rolls the name around his mouth like it's a joke. That's a fancy name for a dirt farmer. Can you even read Lafayette? Yes, Sergeant. Can you add G? Yes, Sergeant. Can you kill? Silence. Poole doesn't answer immediately. The men around him shift weight. McKinney leans closer, his breath visible in the cold. I asked you a question, soldier. Poole meets his eyes. Sergeant, I've killed, but I never murdered. If you're asking if I can defend my country and my crew, the answer is yes. If you're asking if I'll enjoy it, the answer is no. But I'll do what needs doing. McKinney stares at him for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nods. Good answer, Poole. Most of these boys think war is glory. You already know it's work. That's why you'll survive. The training is brutal. Live fire exercises, turret drills, loading sequences until men's hands bleed, navigation through smoke, target identification at speed. But Poole excels in one area that confounds his instructor's instinctive gunnery. On the firing range, while other men use mechanical calculations and range charts, Poole just knows. He watches how wind bends grass. He listens to how engine sounds echo off distant hills. He judges distance the way he judged rainfall back home, by feel, by instinct, by something deeper than mathematics. During one exercise, the target appears for 3 seconds at an unknown distance. Most men miss. Poole fires once. Dead center. The range officer walks to him. "How'd you calculate that?" "I didn't, sir. I just felt where it was." Felt it. Like when you know a storm's coming before you see clouds. You just know. The officer shakes his head. "Kid, I don't know what the hell that means, but keep doing it." By March 1942, Poole qualifies as a tank gunner, top of his class. By June, he's promoted to staff sergeant and assigned to the 3rd Armored Division Company, 2nd Armored Regiment. His crew is assembled from men nobody else wanted. There's Corporal Wilbert "Bert" Close, a mechanic's son from Pennsylvania, who can fix anything with wire and profanity. He's short, stocky, and never stops talking. His job driver: keep the tank moving no matter what. Private First Class. Homer Davis, a quiet black man from Georgia who enlisted to escape Jim Crow and found himself fighting a different kind of racism in uniform. He's the assistant gunner, the man who loads shells while Poole aims. They work in a rhythm neither man can explain. Corporal Dilo Allaire, the radio operator, a former telegraph clerk from Montana who speaks in clipped, efficient sentences. He's the crew's link to the world outside their steel coffin. And Private Roy Riddle, the bow gunner, a farm boy, like Poole, from Oklahoma. He's 19 younger than the rest, with a photograph of his mother folded in his helmet liner. They meet for the first time in a maintenance bay in Camp Polk, Louisiana. The M4 Sherman tank sitting between them is fresh from the factory, 30 tons of riveted steel, a 75mm main gun, and armor that everyone knows won't stop a German 88mm shell. Close pats the hull. "Well, boys, this is it. Our home for however long we last." Davis doesn't smile. "How long do Sherman crews usually last in Europe?" Silence. Poole finally speaks. "Doesn't matter. Statistics are for other crews. We're going to do this differently." Riddle looks up. "How?" "By being smarter. Faster. By never fighting fair." Poole walks around the tank, running his hand along the turret. "A Sherman can't trade punches with a Panzer. We'll lose every time, so we don't trade punches. We ambush. We flank. We shoot first, and we move before they know where we are." Aller crosses his arms. "That's not how they teach it in the manual." The manual was written by men who never had to bet their lives on a Sherman. Poole stops, faces his crew. "I read the numbers. 70% of tank crews don't survive their first engagement. But I made a promise to my wife, and I'm making one to you. I will bring every one of you home. Not most of you. All of you." Close laughs nervously. "That's a hell of a promise, Sarge." "Then we'd better keep it." They train together for 18 months. Close learns to drive through mud, smoke, and shell fire without flinching. Davis and Poole develop a loading rhythm so fast that they can fire 7 rounds a minute, 3 more than regulation standard. Aller memorizes every radio frequency, every call sign, every battalion position. Riddle practices shooting the bow machine gun while the tank is moving at full speed over rough terrain. And Poole teaches them his father's lesson: you don't aim where the enemy is. You aim where they're going to be. By November 1943, they're assigned to their Sherman. They name her "In the Mood," after the Glenn Miller song that plays every night in the barracks. The name is painted in white letters on the barrel. Close welds extra track links to the front for added armor. Davis bolts sandbags to the floor to absorb mine blasts. Aller rigs a secondary radio with a backup battery. Riddle stencils their crew names inside the turret, a ritual, a promise, a prayer. On December 10, 1943, The 3rd Armored Division boards transport ships in New York Harbor. Poole stands on deck, watching the Statue of Liberty disappear into fog. Riddle stands beside him. "You scared, Sarge?" Poole doesn't answer right away. He's thinking about Geneva, about the cotton farm, about the life he's leaving behind. Finally, he speaks. "Fear is just information, Riddle. It tells you something's dangerous. But courage isn't not being scared. Courage is doing the job anyway. And our job is simple. Kill every German tank we see before it kills someone else's crew." The convoy crosses the Atlantic in 32 days, dodging U-boats and winter storms. They land in England on January 15, 1944. For the next 5 months, they train in the hedgerows of Devon, learning to fight in the tight, deadly terrain they'll face in France. Poole drills his crew obsessively. Fire, reload, move. Fire, reload, move. Again, again. Faster, faster. Until the choreography becomes instinct. Until 5 men move like one organism. Until the tank is no longer a machine, but an extension of their collective will. On June 4, 1944, General Eisenhower gives the order: the invasion of France will begin in 48 hours. Poole gathers his crew in the rain beside In the Mood. They've been together for 2 years now. They've trained together, eaten together, endured together. But they've never fought together. Not yet. Tomorrow, Poole says, we cross the channel. Day after we hit the beach, and everything changes. Close spits into the mud. Think we're ready? Poole looks at each man in turn. Close, Davis, Aller, Riddle. His crew, his responsibility, his brothers. We'd better be. June 6, 1944. D-Day. Omaha Beach, Normandy. The landing craft hits the beach at 07:30 hours. The ramp drops. The world becomes noise and blood. Poole's Sherman rolls off into waist-deep water, engine roaring, treads churning. Around them, men are dying, drowning in gear cut down by machine gun fire, blown apart by mortars. But In the Mood keeps moving. Close drives through bodies. There's no choice. The beach is a slaughterhouse, and stopping means death. Riddle fires the bowgun at a concrete bunker. Tracers spark off steel. Davis loads a high-explosive shell. Poole aims at the firing slit, a gap no wider than a man's hand, and fires. The bunker explodes from within. They fight for 11 hours straight. By sunset, the beach is secured. The cost, 400 American dead. Poole's crew. Not a scratch. That night, parked behind a shattered farmhouse, they eat cold rations in silence. Nobody speaks. There's nothing to say. They've crossed the threshold. They're no longer trainees playing war games. They're killers now. Survivors. Brothers in a steel coffin. Poole writes a letter to Geneva by candlelight. We're through the worst part. Now the real work begins. But he's wrong. The worst part hasn't even started, because tomorrow they'll meet their first Panzer, and Poole will learn that everything he knows about farming, hunting, and survival is about to be tested against the most advanced killing machines the Third Reich can build. The hedgerows ahead are soaked in blood and oil, and somewhere in that green hell, 300 German tank crews are waiting. The harvest is about to begin. The morning after Omaha Beach, Poole wakes to find Riddle sitting outside the tank, hands shaking so badly he can't light his cigarette. The kid is 19. Yesterday he killed his first man, maybe his 10th, maybe his 100th. In the chaos you lose count. Poole doesn't say anything. He just sits down beside him, takes the cigarette, lights it, hands it back. Does it get easier? Riddle asks. Poole watches smoke drift toward the ruined farmhouse across the field. No, but you get stronger at carrying it. I keep seeing their faces, the ones in the bunker after we... Don't. Poole's voice is firm but not harsh. Don't look back, not yet. We've got work ahead, and if you're living in yesterday, you'll die today. Riddle nods, wipes his eyes with dirty knuckles. How do you do it, Sarge? How do you just keep going? Poole is quiet for a long moment. Then he pulls out a photograph, Geneva, standing in front of their farmhouse hand, shading her eyes from the Texas sun. I made her a promise. 5 people go home. Not 4, not 3, 5. He puts the photo away. That's how I keep going. I don't have permission to quit. Close emerges from the tank hatch, grease-stained and exhausted. Engine's got a rattle. Something's loose in the transmission. I can patch it, but we need a real mechanic eventually. How long can you keep her running? Poole asks. Close grins, gap-toothed and defiant. As long as you need me to, Sarge. This girl and me, we got an understanding. That's when Aller calls out from the radio. Poole battalion's moving at EO 800. We're headed south to Carentan. Intelligence says there's panzer units dug in along the hedgerows. The word hangs in the air, panzer. They've trained against mock-ups and wooden targets. They've studied German armor in grainy photographs and technical manuals. But none of them have faced a real panzer yet. The Mark IV with its 75mm gun, the Panther with its sloped armor and 75mm KWK-42, or worst of all, the Tiger I with its 88mm cannon that can punch through a Sherman's front plate from a mile away. Davis climbs out of the tank, stretching his back. He's the oldest of the crew at 28, the only one who was already married with kids when he enlisted. You think they're as good as everyone says. Poole stands, brushes dirt from his trousers. Doesn't matter if they're good. Matters if we're better. But they've got thicker armor, bigger guns, better optics. They've got weight. Poole interrupts. Weight means they sink in mud. Weight means they can't maneuver in tight spaces. Weight means they're slow. He taps the side of In the Mood. We're not trying to fight fair. We're trying to fight smart. They roll out at 0800 with 15 other Shermans from Company I. The hedgerows of Normandy are nothing like the training grounds in England. These aren't neat rows of bushes. They're ancient earthen walls, some dating back to Roman times, topped with thick brambles and trees, creating a maze of narrow lanes where visibility drops to 30 yards. Perfect ambush country. Captain Harrison's voice crackles over the radio. All units maintain visual contact. Jerry likes to hide in the tree lines. If you see movement, report before engaging. They move slowly, single file. The roar of 30-ton machines in a confined space is deafening. Poole stands in the commander's hatch, scanning left and right. His hands sweat inside his gloves. Every shadow could be a Panzerfaust team. Every gap in the hedgerow could hide an anti-tank gun. Then it happens. The lead Sherman, commanded by Lieutenant Morrison, a West Point graduate who quoted Patton like scripture, rounds a corner and explodes. No warning. No shot heard. Just a flash of light, and the entire turret lifts off like a lid from a boiling pot. The hull burns so hot that ammunition starts cooking off, secondary explosions ripping through what's left. Contact front. Someone screams over the radio. Poole drops into the turret. Close reverse now. The Sherman lurches backward as a second shell screams past, missing them by inches and slamming into the hedgerow behind them. Poole's mind races. He didn't hear the gun. That means it's at least 600 yards away, hidden in the trees. Davis AP loaded. Yes, Sergeant. Aller radio silence unless I say otherwise. We're dark. Poole scans through his periscope. The other Shermans are scattering, some reversing, some pushing forward, confusion and panic. That's when he sees it, a slight distortion in the tree line, 400 yards to the right, almost invisible. The barrel of a Panzer IV camouflaged with branches. He does the math instantly, not with numbers, but with instinct. The German crew is focused on the burning Sherman. They're reloading. They haven't seen In the Mood yet. Poole has maybe 10 seconds. Close hard right through that gap, full speed. Sarge, that's... do it. The Sherman crashes through the hedgerow. Branches snap. The engine screams. They burst into an open field 40 yards from the German tank's left flank. The Panzer crew is caught completely exposed. The loader is standing in the hatch passing ammunition. The commander is looking the opposite direction. Davis Traverse left Aller mark that position for artillery. "Sir, we're too close for war. Fire!" The 75mm gun roars. At 40 yards, the armor-piercing shell punches through the Panzer's side armor like paper. The German tank doesn't explode, it just dies, smoke pouring from hatches as the crew tries to bail out. Poole doesn't give the order to fire again. The tank is dead. The crew is surrendering. But then he sees the second Panzer. It's been there the whole time, 50 yards behind the first, hidden in a barn's shadow, and its gun is already turning toward them. "Close, move, move!" The Sherman lurches forward just as the German gun fires. The shell hits where they were a second ago, cratering the earth. Poole's ears ring. His vision blurs from the concussion. "Hard left. Get behind that stone wall." Close drives like a man possessed, weaving between trees. The Panzer fires again, misses. Fires again, the shell ricochets off a stone well. They slide behind a collapsed barn wall, buying seconds. Poole's mind is ice. No fear. No hesitation. Just calculation. The Panzer is heavier, slower. It can't pivot as fast. If they stay mobile, stay unpredictable. Riddle suppressing fire on that barn. Keep their heads down. The bow machine gun chatters. Tracers spark off steel. It won't penetrate, but it'll make the German commander hesitate, duck, lose a second of reaction time. "Close when I say go. We're punching through that wall straight at him. We're gonna knife fight this bastard. Jesus, Sarge. Trust me. Davis AP loaded. Loaded. On my mark. Go." The Sherman smashes through the barn wall. Wood and stone explode. For one insane moment, their airborne tracks spinning. They land hard 15 yards from the Panzer, so close Poole can see the commander's face through the cupola. Fire. Both tanks fire simultaneously. The German shell hits their front plate, doesn't penetrate, but the impact is like being inside a bell when it struck. Blood runs from Davis's nose. Aller is thrown against the radio set. Poole's head slams into the sight. But their shell hits true. It enters the Panzer's gun mantlet, the weak spot where the cannon meets the turret, and detonates inside. The German tank shudders, smokes, and goes silent. Poole's crew sits in stunned silence. Riddle is crying. Close is laughing hysterically. Davis is checking his body for wounds that aren't there. Aller is praying in Polish words his grandmother taught him. Poole keys the radio with shaking hands. "Iron Horse 6, this is Iron Horse 2-4. 2 enemy tanks destroyed. Morrison's crew is gone." Captain Harrison's voice is tight with controlled fury. "Copy 2-4. RTB for assessment. Good kill." Good kill. As if the 5 men burning in Morrison's Sherman don't count. That night they park beside a bombed-out church. The chaplain comes around offering prayers and cigarettes. When he reaches in the mood, he looks at the scorch mark on the front armor black steel where German hate tried to break through. "You boys were lucky today," he says. Poole looks up from cleaning his sidearm. "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, Chaplain. We prepared. The opportunity came. We're alive. And those German boys aren't." "No, sir, they're not." The chaplain studies Poole's face, looking for guilt, for doubt, for humanity. "Does it bother you killing them?" Poole doesn't answer immediately. He thinks about Morrison, who had a fiancée waiting in Virginia. He thinks about the German tank commander's face in that final second, young, terrified human. He thinks about Geneva's photograph in his pocket. "It bothers me that it has to be done," he finally says. "But it doesn't bother me that I'm the one doing it. Better me than someone who'll hesitate and get his crew killed." The chaplain nods slowly. "That's either the most honest thing I've heard in this war, or the most frightening. Maybe it's both." Over the next 14 days, In the Mood engages in 11 separate actions. They destroy 4 more Panzers, 6 half-tracks, and 3 self-propelled guns. Poole's kill count rises to 7. The crew develops a rhythm, not quite comfort, but competence. They learn to read each other without words. Close knows when to reverse before Poole gives the order. Davis loads shells in perfect sync with Poole's aiming sequence. Aller anticipates radio calls. Riddle spots threats through the bow machine gun port that Poole's periscope misses. But the cost shows. Close's hands develop a permanent tremor. Davis stops eating, loses 15 pounds. Aller begins talking to himself in sleep. Riddle's baby face ages 5 years in 2 weeks. And Poole stops sleeping more than 2 hours at a time. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees Morrison's turret lifting into the sky. He sees the German commander's face. He sees Geneva standing in a cotton field that seems impossibly far away. On June 24th, after another day of fighting, Captain Harrison pulls Poole aside. "You're being recommended for Silver Star. 3rd Armored Division has taken notice." Poole lights a cigarette, hands steady despite everything. "I don't want a medal, sir. I want a week without someone dying." "That's not how this works, Poole." "I know, sir." Harrison studies him. "How are you holding up?" "I'm doing my job." "That's not what I asked." Poole looks at In the Mood, scarred, dented, painted with near misses and luck running out. His crew sits beside her, sharing a canteen and a stale loaf of bread. Brothers now in ways their blood families will never understand. "I'm holding up because they are," Poole says quietly. "The day I can't protect them is the day I break. Until then, I'm fine." But he's not fine. None of them are. They're ghosts wearing skin, walking through fire every day, knowing that statistics say they won't survive July. Sherman crews last an average of 4 weeks in combat. They're on week 3, yet every morning they climb back into that steel coffin. Every morning they check ammunition test radios and drive toward the sound of guns. Not because they're brave, not because they believe in glory, but because the alternative, stopping, giving up, letting someone else take the risk, is unthinkable. On July 15th, they receive new orders: move to Villers-Fossard. German armor has been spotted. Heavy concentration. All available units needed. Close reads the order and laughs bitterly. "Heavy concentration. That's one way to say we're driving into hell." Poole folds the paper, tucks it into his jacket. "Then we'd better make hell regret seeing us coming." The night before the battle, Poole writes a letter to Geneva. Not the censored cheerful letters he usually sends. A real letter. Truth. "Dear Geneva, if you're reading this, it means I didn't keep my promise. I'm sorry. I tried. But know this: every day I lived was for you. Every decision I made was to get back to that porch, that farm, that life. I loved you in Texas. I love you in France. I'll love you wherever I go next. Your husband, Lafayette." He seals it, addresses. It gives it to the chaplain with instructions to mail it only if Poole doesn't come back. The chaplain takes it with sad, knowing eyes. "You think tomorrow's the day." Poole looks east toward where the guns will thunder at dawn. Tomorrow, or the day after, or the day after that. But not today. Today we're alive, and that's all that matters. The crew sleeps fitfully around In the Mood. In the darkness beneath the stars that shine indifferently on killers and saints alike, 5 men breathe in rhythm, each one carrying the weight of survival, the burden of friendship, and the knowledge that when morning comes, they'll climb back into that machine and do it all over again. Because that's what soldiers do. Not the ones in propaganda posters, not the ones in speeches, but the real ones. The farmers and mechanics and telegram clerks and boys who left home with promises they might not keep. They endure. They fight. They hold on to each other when nothing else makes sense. And tomorrow, in a field near Villers-Fossard, Lafayette Poole will face his greatest test yet. 3 German Panthers, 4 minutes, 1 crew that refuses to die. The harvest continues. July 16, 1944. 06:30 hours. Villers-Fossard, France. Poole stands in the commander's hatch, watching fog roll across farmland that looks disturbingly like home. Same gentle hills, same morning dew, same quiet that makes you forget men die here. Close is underneath the tank, wrench in hand, cursing the transmission that's been grinding since yesterday. Sarge, I need another hour. Maybe 2. We don't have 2 hours. Poole checks his watch. Battalion moves at 0700. Then we move with a busted transmission and pray it doesn't seize up when we need it most. Davis emerges from the tank with a ration tin and a canteen. He sits on the track eating cold hash without tasting it. His eyes are distant, not seeing France, not seeing anything. Poole recognizes the look. Davis is back in Georgia with his wife and 2 daughters, in a place where nothing explodes and nobody dies. You still with us? Poole asks quietly. Davis blinks, comes back. Yeah, Sarge. Just thinking. About my oldest. She turned 6 last month. I missed her birthday. He stares at the hash. What if I miss all her birthdays? What if she grows up and I'm just the man in the photograph she doesn't remember? Poole sits beside him. Then you fight like hell to make sure that doesn't happen. You ever scared we won't make it? Every single day. But you don't show it. Can't afford to. Poole pulls out Geneva's photograph, looks at it, puts it away. The second I show fear is the second you boys start believing it's okay to give up. So I carry mine quiet, and you carry yours, and together we carry each other. Aller's voice crackles from inside the tank. Radio check. Battalion net active. They're saying heavy armor at grid 884321. Multiple contacts. Panthers. The word settles over them like frost. Panther. 45 tons. Front armor 80 mm thick, sloped, which makes it effectively 140 mm. 75 mm KWK 42 gun that can penetrate a Sherman's front plate from 2,000 yards. Meanwhile, their 75 mm can only penetrate a Panther's front armor from inside 500 yards if they hit the exact right spot. Riddle climbs out, face pale. Sarge, I heard what Aller said. We can't fight Panthers head on. It's suicide. Then we don't fight them head on. How? Poole stands, looks toward the tree line where intelligence says 3 Panthers are waiting. Same way a coyote takes down something bigger. You don't attack the teeth. You go for the throat when it's not looking. Captain Harrison's voice over the radio. All Iron Horse units move to assault positions. Expect contact within 30 minutes. Radio discipline from here forward. 15 Shermans roll out in formation, spreading across 2 miles of farmland. Poole watches them through his binoculars, boys in machines driving toward math that doesn't favor them. For every Sherman that survives an encounter with a Panther, 3 don't. Those are the odds. Those are the facts. Close gets the transmission working well enough to move. The engine coughs, sputters, catches. She'll run, he says, but if we have to reverse hard, we're done. Then we don't reverse. They advance slowly, hull down behind a ridge line, only the turret exposed. Poole scans the tree line 800 yards ahead. 3 hours of dawn sunlight. No wind. Perfect killing weather. That's when he sees it, not with his eyes, but with instinct. A shadow that's slightly wrong. A gap in the trees where branches hang different. The barrel of a Panther camouflaged so well that even looking directly at it you'd miss it. Contact, Poole whispers. Trees 11 o'clock, 800 yards. Aller confirms through the periscope. I see it. Jesus, there's 3 of them. All in a line. Perfect ambush position. The Germans are waiting for the Shermans to advance into the open field, where they'll be exposed, where the Panthers can engage from safety. It's textbook. It's smart. It's what Poole would do. But Poole isn't advancing. Close hard left. Take us into that depression behind the stone wall. Sarge, that's the opposite direction. Do it. The Sherman rolls backward, disappears into a fold in the terrain. The other American tanks keep advancing. They haven't seen the Panthers yet. Poole watches through his periscope as the lead Sherman, commanded by Lieutenant Baker, crosses into the open field. The first Panther fires. Baker's Sherman explodes instantly, catastrophic ammunition detonation. The turret cartwheels through the air. No one gets out. The second Panther fires. Another Sherman dies. Chaos erupts on the radio. Contact front Panthers in the trees. Fall back, fall back. Shermans scatter in panic. Some reverse, some try to push forward, some just sit frozen while German shells find them. In 90 seconds, 5 Shermans are burning. Poole's crew sits in silence, listening to men die over the radio. Riddle is crying. Davis has his eyes closed, lips moving in prayer. Even Close, who jokes through everything, looks sick. "Sarge," Aller says quietly, "we have to help them." "We will." When the Panthers stop watching the field and start watching the burning tanks, when they think they've won. Poole checks his watch. 60 seconds. The German crews will be celebrating reloading, maybe even getting cocky. That's when predators make mistakes. He keys the radio. "All Iron Horse units lay smoke and withdraw. Repeat smoke and withdraw." White phosphorus shells burst across the battlefield. Within seconds, the entire field is a white wall. The Panthers keep firing, but they're shooting blind now. Poole turns to his crew. "Close, we're going wide left through that orchard. Stay in the trees. Davis AP loaded and 1 he ready. We're going to flank them." "Flank," Riddle's voice cracks. "Sarge, they'll hear us coming." "Not if they're too busy shooting at smoke." It's insane. It's exactly what no tank manual would ever recommend. It's their only chance. The Sherman rolls through the orchard branches, scraping armor engine roaring. 200 yards. 300. Poole counts distance by fence posts and haystacks. 400 yards. They're parallel to the Panthers, now separated by a hedgerow and 50 yards of open ground. Poole can hear the German tanks firing, the distinctive crack of the KWK-42 gun, the metallic clank of empty shell casings hitting dirt. He can hear German voices shouting coordinates. They have no idea In the Mood is 30 yards away on their flank, where their armor is thinnest. Stop. Close breaks. The Sherman sits silent behind the hedgerow. Poole's heart hammers against his ribs. This is it. One shot. If they miss, if the shell bounces, if anything goes wrong, the Panthers will turn, and they'll die before they can reload. "Davis on my mark, we're punching through this hedge and firing immediately. Traverse left. Side armor. Engine compartment. 1 shot." Davis's hands shake loading the shell. "Sarge, I can't see the target yet." "You will. Trust me." Poole takes a breath. In his mind, he's back in Texas hunting deer with his father. You don't think. You don't hesitate. You just let your body do what it knows. Close forward. Full throttle. The Sherman crashes through the hedgerow like a linebacker through a banner. For 1 crystalline second, they're in the open. 30 yards from a Panther's side armor, the German crew completely exposed in their hatches, reloading, not even looking their direction. Fire. The 75mm shell hits the Panther below the turret ring. The German tank shudders. Smoke pours from hatches. The crew bails out, uniforms on fire, rolling in the grass. The second Panther swivels its turret toward them. Poole sees the gun barrel turning, too slow, too late. "Davis, reload, close, hard, right." The Sherman lurches just as the Panther fires. The shell passes through the space they occupied 1 second ago. Poole doesn't wait for orders. He traverses the turret, manually finds the second Panther in his sights, fires the moment Davis slams the breech closed. Another hit. Another German crew abandoning their tank. The third Panther is turning now, engine roaring, trying to bring its gun to bear. But it's a 45-ton machine trying to pivot in soft ground. It's slow. It's vulnerable. Poole knows they have maybe 5 seconds before that gun finds them. 5 seconds before a shell punches through their armor and they burn like Morrison, like Baker, like every other Sherman crew that bet against math. Riddle machine gun on that commander, keep his head down. Tracers spark off the Panther's cupola. The German commander ducks. That's the second Poole needs. Davis. Loaded. Fire. The shell enters the Panther's side armor just behind the drive sprocket. There's a muffled explosion, then silence. The massive tank just stops smoke leaking from vision ports. Poole's ears ring. His hands shake. His crew sits in stunned disbelief. 4 minutes. 3 Panthers. 5 men in a Sherman that shouldn't have won. Captain Harrison's voice over the radio is barely controlled. Iron Horse 2-4 report status. Poole realizes he's been holding his breath. 3 enemy tanks destroyed. No casualties. Silence on the radio. Then, say again, 2-4. 3 Panthers destroyed. Crew is intact. Another pause. How? Poole looks at his crew, close gripping the controls so hard his knuckles are white. Davis with blood running from his nose, from the gun's recoil. Aller frantically writing coordinates with shaking hands. Riddle staring at the Panthers like he can't believe they're real. We didn't fight fair, sir. We fought smart. That night the crew sits in silence beside In the Mood. Other tankers walk past staring, whispering. 3 Panthers. The story spreads through the battalion like fire through dry grass. Poole doesn't acknowledge them. He's writing in a small notebook documenting each engagement, each decision, each mistake. If he dies tomorrow, maybe someone will read this. Maybe someone will learn. Close finally speaks. Sarge, we should be dead. You know that, right? By every rule of war, we should have burned in that field. But we didn't. Why? Why are we alive when Baker's crew isn't? When Morrison's crew isn't? What makes us special? Poole looks up from his notebook. Nothing makes us special. We just refused to do what was expected. The Germans expected us to charge across that field. We didn't. They expected us to fight by the rules. We didn't. The second you start fighting the way the enemy wants you to fight, you lose. Davis speaks quietly. My grandmother used to say God protects fools and children. I think we might be both. No. Poole closes the notebook. We're neither. We're just 5 men who want to live more than we want to die. And we're willing to do whatever it takes to make that happen. Riddle looks at the burning Panthers in the distance. German bodies lie in the grass, boys, most of them no older than him. Does it ever bother you, Sarge, killing them? Poole doesn't answer immediately. He thinks about the German commander in that final second, trying desperately to bring his gun to bear, knowing he was too slow. He thinks about Geneva. He thinks about promises made and promises kept. It bothers me that we're in a world where I have to, he finally says. But it doesn't bother me that I'm good at it. Better me than someone who'll hesitate and get his crew killed. Over the next 3 weeks, In the Mood becomes legend. July 18th, 2 Mark IVs destroyed near St. Lo. July 22nd, 1 Panther and 3 half-tracks at Marigny. July 29th, 4 Panthers during Operation Cobra, the American breakout from Normandy. Poole's personal kill count reaches 43. His crew hasn't lost a single man. Other tankers start asking for his advice. How do you fight Panthers? How do you survive? Poole's answer is always the same. Don't fight their fight. Make them fight yours. Choose the ground. Control the engagement. Never ever trade shots with something bigger than you. But the cost shows in ways medals don't measure. Close's hands won't stop shaking. Davis stops writing letters home, can't find words for what they're living through. Aller develops a twitch, constantly checking 6 o'clock, certain something's behind them. Riddle starts seeing German tanks in every shadow, every barn, every tree line. And Poole stops sleeping entirely. Every time he closes his eyes, he's back in that orchard making the decision to flank. One wrong choice, 1 second of hesitation, and his crew burns. The weight of that, the knowledge that 5 lives balance on his split-second decisions, carves lines into his face that make him look 40 instead of 24. On August 10th, they receive a 3-day rest. The crew sits around In the Mood, passing a bottle of liberated cognac. They don't talk about the war. They talk about home. Close describes his mother's peach pie. Davis talks about teaching his daughters to fish. Aller remembers telegraph offices and Montana winters. Riddle just listens, soaking up their voices, memorizing their faces. Poole watches his crew and realizes something that makes his chest ache. These 4 men know him better than his own brothers. They've seen him at his worst, his most afraid, his most brutal. They've watched him kill without hesitation and show mercy when it mattered. They know every decision he makes carries the weight of their lives, and they trust him anyway. "Thank you," Poole says quietly. They look up confused. "For what?" Close asks. "For staying alive, for trusting me, for being the best damn crew in the 3rd Armored." Davis raises the bottle. "To staying alive." They drink. They laugh. For 3 days they pretend they're not going back. They pretend the war might end tomorrow. They pretend 5 men in a Sherman can keep beating impossible odds forever. But on August 14th, orders arrive move east to Chambois. German armor attempting to escape the Falaise pocket. Heavy Tiger presence expected. Tigers, not Panthers. Tigers. 68 tons. Front armor 100 mm. The 80 mm gun that tankers have nightmares about. Close reads the order and laughs high hysterical. Of course it's Tigers. Why would they send us after something reasonable? Poole folds. The order looks east toward where death waits in steel and fire. His kill count is 61. Statistically, they're on borrowed time. Mathematically, they should already be dead. But math doesn't account for will. Math doesn't account for 5 men who refuse to become statistics. "Load up," Poole says. "We've got work to do." They climb back into In the Mood. Their fortress, their coffin, their home. The engine roars to life. The gun barrel swings forward. 5 men breathe as one organism moving toward the sound of guns, toward the fire, toward the place where legends are forged or forgotten. Behind them, the fields of Normandy are soaked in oil and blood, and the memory of men who didn't make it home. Ahead, the road to Germany stretches like a gauntlet, each mile another test, each engagement another chance to fail. But they don't think about failure. They think about Geneva waiting in Texas. They think about peach pie and fishing with daughters, and Montana telegraphs, and mothers who still believe their boys are coming home. They think about the promise, 5 go home, not 4, not 3, but 5. And as long as that promise holds, they keep moving forward into the fire, refusing to break, refusing to stop, refusing to become just another burning hull beside a French road. The harvest continues, and the reaper in the cotton farmer's hands grows sharper with every kill. August 14, 1944. The road to Chambois is lined with dead horses and abandoned German equipment. Poole watches the wreckage pass through his periscope and thinks about endings. Everything ends: crops, seasons, wars, lives. The question isn't whether it ends, but whether you're still standing when it does. Close navigates around a crater that swallowed half the road. Sarge intelligence was right. Germans are running scared. This ain't organized retreat, it's panic. Cornered animals are the most dangerous kind, Poole replies. He's thinking about coyotes back home, how they'd circle the henhouse when starving. Desperate, vicious, willing to die fighting rather than die running. The radio crackles. Captain Harrison's voice. All units be advised. Air reconnaissance reports at least 6 Tigers attempting to hold the corridor at Chambois. They're buying time for German infantry to escape the pocket. Expect fanatical resistance. 6 Tigers. Poole does the math automatically. 68 tons each. The 88mm gun that makes Sherman armor meaningless. At 500 yards, a Tiger can penetrate their front plate. At the same distance, their 75mm just makes sparks on Tiger armor. Riddle's voice is small from the bow gun position. Sarge, we've never fought 6 at once. Then today we learn how. But Poole's gut churns. 61 kills. 3 months of survival. They've been lucky, yes, but also smart. They've chosen every engagement, controlled every battlefield. Now they're being ordered into a meat grinder where tigers hold the high ground and desperation makes men suicidal. Davis speaks without looking up from his loader's station. My daughter wrote me a letter, said she's learning to read, asked when I'm coming home. He pauses. I didn't know how to answer her. Tell her soon, Poole says. Tell her soon. They reach the rally point at 1400 hours. 12 Shermans from Company Y, 8 from Company H. 20 tanks to break 6 tigers holding the escape route. The math is ugly. Historical data says they'll lose at least half before the tigers are destroyed. 10 crews, 50 men. That's the price of victory on paper. Poole refuses to accept it. He climbs out of In the Mood, gathers the other tank commanders. They're young. Most are younger than him, and he's only 24. Lieutenant Hayes is 22, fresh from Fort Knox commanding his first tank. Sergeant Dutch Morrison, no relation to the Morrison who died at Villiers-Fossard, is 23 with 2 kills and terror in his eyes. Captain Harrison watches Poole with something between respect and worry. Gentlemen, Harrison begins, our orders are to assault the German position head-on at 1600 hours. Artillery will soften them up for 30 minutes. Then we advance in line formation. That's suicide. Poole interrupts. Silence. You don't interrupt captains. Poole knows this. He doesn't care. Harrison's jaw tightens. You have an alternative, Sergeant. Poole pulls out his notebook, sketches quick lines in dirt. Tigers are holding the high ground here overlooking the valley. Artillery won't touch them. They're dug in with earthworks. If we charge up that valley in line formation, they'll pick us off one by one from 500 yards. We'll never get close enough to hurt them. Then what do you suggest? Poole points to the map. There's a farm road here, runs parallel to the valley behind this ridge. 3 tanks take that road, it's out of the Tigers' line of sight. While they're focused on the main assault, we flank from behind the ridge, get within 300 yards, hit them from the side. Hayes shakes his head. That's not the plan. Division says, Division isn't the one getting shot at. Poole's voice is flat. We've killed 61 tanks using flanking tactics. Not one, not 1061. The second we fight the enemy's fight, we die. Harrison studies the sketch. Poole can see the calculation in his eyes. Regulations versus results orders versus survival. Finally, Harrison speaks. Poole, you take 2 tanks and execute your flanking maneuver. The rest of us draw their attention. But if this fails, it won't. If it fails, I'm putting you up for court-martial. Poole nods once. Fair enough, sir, but we won't fail. He chooses his flanking force carefully. Dutch Morrison because the kid needs to learn from someone who won't get him killed. And Sergeant Hammer Jackson, a black tanker from Alabama, who survived 38 days through sheer stubbornness and a gift for reading terrain. At 1545 hours, Poole briefs his crew one last time. We're doing this different. 3 tanks behind enemy lines fighting 6 Tigers from the flank. If we die trying something smart instead of something stupid. Close laughs nervously. That's the most inspiring speech I've ever hated, Sarge. Good. If you're comfortable, you're not paying attention. They move out at 1600 hours precisely. The main force advances into the valley. Poole hears the first Tiger gunfire, that distinctive crack boom that makes your spine freeze. He doesn't look. He forces himself to focus on the farm road on the ridge on the mission. The road is barely wider than the Sherman. Tree branches scrape armor. The engine sounds deafening in the confined space. 200 yards. 300. Poole counts distance by fence posts, again a farmer's instinct in a soldier's war. At 600 yards behind the German position, he orders the column to halt. Dismount. We scout on foot. Close stares at him. You want us to leave the tank? For 2 minutes. I need to see their exact position before we commit. Poole, Dutch, and Hammer crawl up the ridge. Through binoculars, Poole sees the Tigers, 6 of them dug into earthworks guns, pointed toward the valley where American Shermans are dying. He watches one Tiger fire, watches a Sherman, one 200 yards away, explode, watches another crew burn. His hands shake with rage. Not fear rage. Those men died following orders that ignored reality. Died because someone drew a line on a map without understanding that Tigers eat Shermans for breakfast when you fight their fight. "We hit them now," Poole whispers, "before they realize we're here." Back in the tanks, Poole issues final instructions over the radio. "We attack simultaneously. I take the leftmost Tiger. Dutch center left. Hammer center right. 2 rounds each, then relocate before they return fire. Speed is survival." Questions. Dutch's voice trembles. "What if we miss?" "Don't." They advance to 300 yards. The Tigers still haven't noticed they're too focused on the valley, too confident in their position. Poole watches through his periscope, waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting for 3 Tigers to fire simultaneously when their crews are distracted, when the noise covers the sound of Sherman engines. 3 Tigers fire. 3 Shermans die in the valley. Now! 3 American tanks burst over the ridge. Poole's first shot hits the left Tiger's engine deck. The German tank doesn't explode, just stops smoke pouring from vents. His second shot punches through the turret ring. The crew bails out. Dutch and Hammer hit their targets. 5 seconds. 2 Tigers dead, 1 damaged. But the other 3 Tigers are rotating their turrets, and 68-ton machines don't rotate fast. Poole knows they have maybe 10 seconds before those 88 medium guns find them. Close reverse back down the ridge. The 3 Shermans disappear behind the ridge just as Tiger shells scream overhead. Poole's heart hammers. They've wounded the beast, but it's not dead yet. Over the radio, he hears chaos in the valley. Harrison's voice. "They're turning around. Tigers are repositioning, all units press the attack." Poole understands immediately. The Tigers are no longer focused on the valley, they're searching for the threat behind them. They've lost their defensive advantage. They're vulnerable. "We go again," Poole says. "Different position. Keep them guessing. Run for the next 17 minutes. Poole's 3 tanks play a deadly game. They appear, fire, disappear, each time from a different position along the ridge. The Tigers are powerful, but slow. They can't keep up with the harassment. They can't defend 2 directions simultaneously. At 16:23 hours, Poole watches through his binoculars as the 4th Tiger takes a shot from Dutch that penetrates the ammunition storage. The explosion is so violent it lifts the turret 30 feet into the air. The remaining 2 Tigers begin to withdraw. Not retreat, withdrawal. Organized. Disciplined. Even in defeat, the German crews are professional. Poole lets them go. Over the radio, Dutch sounds confused. "Sarge, we can pursue." "No, they're done fighting. Let them run." Hammer's voice. "But orders say." "Orders say break the position. The position is broken. Those crews aren't our enemy anymore. They're just trying to survive." Poole thinks about the German commander he shot at Villiers-Fossard, the one who tried desperately to bring his gun to bear. Just a man. Just someone else trying to get home. "We kill tanks, not men who've already quit." When they return to the rally point, Captain Harrison is waiting. His face is unreadable. "That was the most insubordinate, reckless, effective action I've ever witnessed." "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me. You just saved 15 crews by ignoring the tactical plan." Harrison pauses. "You're being recommended for another Silver Star, and probably also court-martialed." Poole shrugs. "As long as my crew goes home, sir, I don't care which one happens first." That night, the crew celebrates quietly. 67 kills. 6 Tigers held off with 3 Shermans and aggressive tactics. 0 American casualties in Poole's element. The legend grows. But Poole doesn't celebrate. He sits alone writing in his notebook. He's documenting everything. Every decision. Every tactic. Every lesson bought with blood. Not for glory. For the crews coming behind them, The ones who will face panthers and tigers with the same inadequate armor and the same terrible odds. Davis finds him. "You okay, Sarge?" 10 Shermans died today because some officer thought line formations were a good idea against dug-in tigers. Poole's voice is hollow. 50 men burned because nobody told them they had permission to fight smart instead of fight stupid. You can't save everyone. I know, but I can try to teach them before they die learning. The next 6 weeks are a blur of combat. August 18th, 2 Panthers at Argenton. August 23rd, 3 Mark IVs near Sens. September 2nd, 5 Panthers and 2 Tigers during the liberation of Belgium. Poole's kill count climbs 83, 97, 112. The crew changes. Not visibly, they still laugh, still function, still fight. But something internal breaks in stages. Close stops making jokes. Davis stops writing letters home entirely. Aller develops a stutter. Riddle's hands shake whenever they're not in combat. And Poole becomes something else entirely. Not quite human. Not quite machine. He exists in the space between calculating angles, judging distances, making decisions that keep 5 men alive while hundreds die around them. He stops sleeping, stops eating regularly. His face becomes gaunt eyes hollow. Geneva's photograph is wearing thin from handling the edges frayed her face fading. Poole looks at it one night and realizes he can barely remember what her voice sounds like. The war is eating his memories, replacing them with smoke and fire and the faces of boys who didn't make it home. On September 19th, they receive orders to advance into Germany proper. First American tank crew to cross the border. They roll through Rutgen, a small German village, and Poole sees civilians watching old men, women, children. The same as French civilians, Belgian civilians, any civilians. Just people trying to survive a war they didn't start and can't end. "They're looking at us like we're monsters," Riddle whispers. "Maybe we are," Poole replies. "Maybe that's what war does. Makes monsters out of men who just wanted to farm cotton or fix engines or send telegrams." Close speaks from the driver's seat. "You ever think about what happens when we go home? Every day. Think we'll be the same people." Poole looks at his reflection in the periscope glass. A stranger stares back older, harder, carrying weight that has nothing to do with pounds. "No, we won't. But maybe that's the price. We become this so other people don't have to." September 29th, 1944, Aachen, Germany. The crew's 81st consecutive day of combat. They've destroyed 258 German tanks and armored vehicles. Poole is the highest-scoring tank commander in American history. The crew is legendary. They are invincible. And then the universe reminds them that nobody is. The city is rubble and snipers. Every street a potential ambush. In the mood, advances slowly, turret traversing constantly. Poole's instincts scream danger, but he can't pinpoint the source. "Something's wrong," he says. "Everything's wrong," Close mutters. "We're in a German city in a 30-ton coffin with a transmission that sounds like a coffee grinder full of rocks." They turn into a narrow street. Buildings on both sides. No room to maneuver. Poole's gut twists. "Back up, now!" But before Close can reverse, a cellar window shatters. A Panzerfaust rocket fired from 15 feet away, impossible to dodge, screams toward them. Poole has 1 second. 1 second to think this is how it ends. Not in a grand battle. Not fighting tigers. Just a kid with a rocket launcher in a basement, desperate, scared, doing his job. The Panzerfaust hits the front glacis plate. The shaped charge penetrates. Molten copper jet streams into the crew compartment. Homer Davis, the loader from Georgia, who wanted to teach his daughters to fish, dies instantly. The blast catches him full on. He doesn't scream. He just stops existing. Poole feels the explosion like a fist to the chest. Shrapnel tears through his leg. Close is screaming. Aller is pulling at something. Poole can't see Riddle through the smoke. His ears ring. His leg won't move. The tank is on fire. This is the moment every tank crew fears, trapped in burning steel, knowing you have seconds before the ammunition cooks off and there's nothing left to bury. Out! Poole's voice is raw. Everybody out! He hauls himself through the commander's hatch, his leg useless, dragging his body with his arms. Close emerges, face bloody. Aller crawls out the loader's hatch. Riddle, thank God, Riddle is moving, stumbling away from the tank. They collapse in a doorway 20 yards from In the Mood. Poole watches his home, his fortress, his partner burn. Watches ammunition begin to explode inside. Watches the barrel droop from heat. But what breaks him isn't the tank. It's turning to count his crew. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. Davis is still inside. What's left of him? Medics arrive. Someone's pressing bandages to Poole's leg. Someone's asking questions he can't hear through the ringing. He watches In the Mood burn and thinks about promises. 5 go home. 5. Not 4. Before he passes out from blood loss, he asks the only question that matters. Can she still fight? The medic stares at him like he's insane. The tank is an inferno. Poole is going home whether he wants to or not. Soldier, the medic says gently, your war is over. And Poole understands. 81 days, 258 kills, 4 men alive, 1 man dead. The promise broken. The harvest ended. He closes his eyes and sees Davis loading shells with mathematical precision. Sees him eating cold hash and talking about his daughters. Sees him praying before every engagement. Gone. Just gone. They carry Poole away from the burning tank. He doesn't fight them. Can't fight them. His body is broken. His leg shattered, his war finished. But as the morphine takes him under, his last conscious thought is not about medals or glory or the 258 tanks he killed. It's about Geneva standing in a cotton field in Texas, waiting for a man who's not sure he knows how to be human anymore. The legend of Lafayette Poole ends in a German street in fire and smoke and the terrible mathematics of war. 4 men lived. 1 man died. And somewhere in the smoking wreck of In the Mood, the dream of bringing everyone home burns with everything else. The hospital in England smells like disinfectant and defeat. Poole wakes 3 days after Aachen with his right leg in a cast and a hole in his chest that has nothing to do with shrapnel. The surgeon tells him he's lucky the wound missed the artery by inches. Poole doesn't feel lucky. Lucky would be Davis sitting beside him complaining about the food, talking about his daughters. Close visits on the 4th day. His face is bandaged, one eye swollen shut, but he's walking. Hey, Sarge. Poole can barely look at him. The others. Riddle's got a concussion and burns on his hands. Aller's deaf in one ear, may be permanent, but they're alive. Close sits in the chair beside the bed, moving like an old man, though he's only 26. Davis's wife got the telegram yesterday. Poole closes his eyes. In his mind, he sees Davis loading shells with that focused intensity, sees him praying before battle, sees him talking about teaching his girls to fish. Gone. Vaporized. Nothing left to send home but a flag and condolences. I promised, Poole whispers. I promised I'd bring everyone back. You brought back everyone you could. That's not the same thing. Close leans forward and his voice is fierce despite the bandages. You kept us alive for 81 days, Sarge. 81 days when we should have died on day 1. You think that doesn't matter? You think Davis's girls won't grow up knowing their daddy died with the best tank commander in the war? You think his sacrifice doesn't mean something? It means I failed. No. Close stands, and there's anger in his voice now. Failure would have been all 5 of us dying because you were too scared to break the rules, too worried about regulations to keep us alive. You did the impossible. You made a Sherman fight like a tiger. You turned 4 misfits and a farm boy into legends. Davis died. That's war. But he died knowing his crew mattered, knowing you'd die before you'd let him down. That's not failure, Sarge. That's love. Poole turns his face away because if he looks at Close, he'll break, and he can't afford to break yet. Not until the morphine stops and the real pain begins. Close leaves. Poole stares at the ceiling and counts the dead. Morrison at Villiers-Fossard, Baker at Chambois. The 10 crews who died attacking tigers because some officer couldn't imagine a different way. Davis in a burning Sherman on a German street. How many more will die before someone realizes the tanks are wrong, the tactics are wrong? Everything about how they're fighting this war is wrong. General Rose visits on the 7th day. He's the commanding officer of the 3rd Armored Division, a legend himself, leading from the front, sleeping in the mud with his men. He stands at the foot of Poole's bed with his cap in his hands like he's visiting a church. Sergeant Poole, sir, I wanted to tell you personally you're being awarded the Silver Star with Oak Leaf Cluster, 2 Bronze Stars, the Purple Heart, and when this war ends, I'm going to make damn sure everyone knows what you and your crew accomplished. Poole doesn't respond. Medals feel obscene when Davis is dead. Rose continues quieter now. I also want you to know your tactics are being written into training manuals. Every tank commander in the European theater is studying what you did. You've saved more lives than you'll ever know by proving there's a different way to fight. Davis is still dead, sir. Yes, he is. Rose puts his cap back on. But because of what you taught us, maybe 1,000 other men won't be. That's the terrible math of war, Poole. We spend lives to save lives. We break the best among us to protect the rest. It's not fair. It's not right. But it's necessary. After Rose leaves, Poole reads the official report. Homer Davis, assistant gunner killed in action, September 29, 1944. Posthumous Bronze Star. Survived by wife Sarah and daughters Ruth and Mary, ages 6 and 4. The words are clinical empty. They don't capture the way Davis hummed while loading shells. Don't mention how he shared his rations with every stray dog they found. Don't say anything about the man, just the soldier. Poole writes a letter to Sarah Davis, not the official condolence letter that's already been sent. A real letter. He writes for 3 hours through the pain, through the tears he refuses to let fall in front of nurses. He tells Sarah about her husband's courage, his faith, his refusal to give up even when the odds were impossible. He tells her about the moment Davis asked if he'd miss his daughter's birthdays, about the quiet dignity with which he faced death every single day. He ends with the only truth that matters. Your husband died protecting his brothers. He died doing what he believed was right. And he died knowing he was loved by the 4 men whose lives he saved just by being the kind of man he was. We will carry him home in our hearts because there's nowhere else left to carry him. He seals the letter, addresses it, knows it won't be enough, can never be enough, but sends it anyway because it's all he has left to give. The war continues without him. Poole follows the news from his hospital bed. American forces pushing into Germany. The Battle of the Bulge, the final collapse of the Third Reich. He reads about other tank aces, other crews, other heroes. None of them reach 258. His record stands, but the number means nothing. It's just statistics. Just dead machines piloted by dead boys who believed their own propaganda about superior German engineering. Poole doesn't feel pride. He feels exhausted. Close Riddle and Aller visit together 2 weeks before Christmas. They look wrong out of uniform, like actors playing civilians. They sit around Poole's bed, and nobody knows what to say. The silence stretches. Finally, Riddle speaks. They're sending us home. Medical discharge, all 3 of us. Good, Poole says, and means it. What about you? Aller asks. His voice is louder now, compensating for the ear that doesn't work anymore. Doctors say I'll walk again. Maybe. Limp for the rest of my life, but I'll walk. And then? Then I go back to Texas, back to Geneva, back to cotton farming. Poole looks at the 3 of them, his brothers, his crew, the men he kept alive through mathematics and instinct and sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. What about you boys? Close shrugs. Mom's got that peach orchard. Figure I'll help her run it. Fix tractors instead of tanks. Riddle stares at his hands, the burn scars still pink and healing. Dad wants me to take over the farm. I don't know if I can. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that tank. Me too, Poole admits. Maybe we'll always be back in that tank. Maybe that's the price we pay for coming home when others didn't. Aller clears his throat. I've been thinking about Davis a lot. About how he'd want us to live. You think he'd want us to spend the rest of our lives broken? Poole considers this. He thinks about Davis talking about his daughters the way his face lit up when he described teaching them to fish. No. He'd want us to live big enough for both of us. For all of us who didn't make it. Then that's what we'll do, Close says. We'll go home. We'll have families. We'll build things instead of destroying them. And we'll remember. They shake hands before leaving an inadequate gesture for men who've shared blood and fire and the unique intimacy of facing death together. But it's all they have. Words fail. Medals fail. Everything fails to capture what it means to survive when survival feels like betrayal. Poole returns to Farmersville, Texas, in March 1945. The train station is decorated with yellow ribbons and welcome home signs. Geneva is there, and when he sees her, he finally breaks. Not crying, he still can't cry, but something inside him cracks open and the war pours out. She holds him while he shakes, while he tries to explain what can't be explained, while he struggles to remember how to be the man she married instead of the killer he became. They don't talk about it after that first night. Geneva understands instinctively that Poole needs silence, more than questions, presence, more than analysis. They return to the farm. Poole learns to walk with a cane, then without it. The limp never goes away, but he adapts. The land doesn't care about his scars. He plants cotton, watches it grow, harvests it in the fall. The rhythm of seasons helps the proof that life continues, that growth follows death, that spring always returns, even when winter feels eternal. But at night, he wakes gasping back in the tank, feeling the Panzerfaust hit, watching Davis die again and again in dreams that never fade. Geneva never asks him to talk about the war, but she notices when he stares too long at the horizon, notices when he flinches at loud noises, notices when he sits on the porch counting stars like he's counting the dead. She doesn't try to fix him. She just sits beside him, her presence a reminder that he's home, he's safe, he's loved. Years pass. Poole and Geneva have children, a son who never asks about the war because his father's silence teaches him not to. Poole becomes a deacon at the local church, works the land, helps neighbors, becomes known as a good man, a quiet man, a man who carries something heavy but never complains about the weight. In 1947, he receives a letter from Sarah Davis. She's remarried a good man, she says, who treats her daughters with kindness. Ruth is 8 now, learning piano. Mary is 6, wants to be a teacher. They're healing. She writes the way war wounds heal, slowly, incompletely, but enough to keep living. She ends the letter. Thank you for bringing him home in your words. The army gave me a flag. You gave me back my husband's heart. Poole keeps the letter in his Bible pressed between Psalms and Proverbs, where David writes about walking through valleys of shadow and fearing no evil. He doesn't fear evil anymore. He's seen too much of it to fear it. But he carries it the way all soldiers carry the war they survived. Close writes occasionally short letters about peach harvests and broken tractors, and a wife who's learning to live with his nightmares. Riddle sends a photograph of his wedding, his face older than his years, but smiling. Aller's letters stop after 1952. Poole learns later that Aller took his own life, the silent casualty of a war that ended in 1945, but kept killing long after. Poole doesn't judge. He understands. Some wounds don't heal. Some weights become too heavy. Aller fought for 7 years after Aachen, before the fight ran out. That's 7 more years than anyone had a right to expect. The Korean War starts. Poole is too old, too broken to serve. He watches young men ship out and wants to tell them, don't fight fair, don't trust the manual, don't make promises you can't keep. But they wouldn't understand. You can't explain war to someone who hasn't lived it. Words fail. Always. In 1967, a journalist finds him. Wants to write a story about the greatest tank ace in American history. Poole refuses. The journalist persists. Poole finally agrees to one interview on the condition that they talk about his crew, not his kills. The journalist asks, how does it feel to have destroyed 258 enemy tanks? Poole stares at his cotton field, the same field his father worked, the same field his son will inherit. It feels like I did my job, nothing more. But you're a hero. Don't you want recognition? Son, Poole says slowly, I'm not a hero. I'm a farmer who got good at killing because the alternative was watching my friends die. Recognition doesn't bring back Davis, doesn't fix Aller, doesn't make Close's hands stop shaking. I did what needed doing, and it cost me pieces of my soul I'll never get back. You want to write about heroes? Write about the boys who didn't come home. The article runs in a small military history magazine. Poole reads it once, files it away, never mentions it again. He grows old the way farmers do, slowly, stubbornly rooted in land that doesn't care about medals or kill counts or the weight men carry. His hair grays. His limp worsens. But he still plants every spring, still harvests every fall, still sits on the porch with Geneva watching the sun set over fields that look exactly like they did before the war, before Normandy, before everything changed. In 1991, on a warm Texas evening in May, Lafayette G. Poole dies in his sleep at age 70. The funeral is small. His children are there. His grandchildren. A handful of veterans who knew him not as the legendary tank commander, but as a quiet deacon who helped with church fundraisers and never talked about the war. Close attends moving slowly. Now hands still trembling after 46 years. Riddle is there too. Silent face carved from old grief. They stand at the graveside and don't speak. There's nothing left to say that wasn't said in a Sherman tank half a century ago. The headstone is simple. Lafayette G. Poole, U.S. Army WWII. No mention of 258 kills. No reference to silver stars or legends, or the fact that he changed how America fought armored warfare. Just a name and a service record, and the dates that bookend a life. But the men who knew him, who fought with him, who survived because of him, know the truth. They know that courage isn't about fearlessness. It's about doing the job when you're terrified, protecting your brothers when the odds are impossible, carrying the weight so others don't have to. They know that heroism isn't glory. It's the quiet dignity of planting cotton after destroying tanks. It's loving your wife when you can barely remember how to be human. It's living big enough to honor the dead, even when living feels like the hardest battle of all. The war ended in 1945. But for Lafayette Poole, it never really ended. It just transformed from killing fields in France to cotton fields in Texas, from protecting his crew to protecting his family, from fighting Germans to fighting the memories that ambushed him in dreams. He carried 258 kills to his grave. But he also carried the weight of promises kept and promises broken, of lives saved and lives lost, of the terrible mathematics that say you can destroy 1,000 tanks and still fail to save the one man who mattered most. In the end, Poole would say, if he were still here to say it, that the measure of a soldier isn't how many enemies he kills, but how many friends he brings home. And by that measure, he failed. 4 out of 5 is 80%. In school, that's a B. In war, it's a lifetime of guilt carried with quiet grace. But here's what they don't teach in history books. 80% was a miracle. Statistically, all 5 should have died in July. The fact that 4 survived 81 days of combat against impossible odds wasn't failure. It was love expressed through trigonometry and instinct, and the refusal to accept defeat. Lafayette Poole didn't want to be a legend. He wanted to be a farmer, but war made him into something else. A killer with a conscience, a hero who felt like a failure, a man who destroyed 258 machines to save 4 lives and spent the rest of his own life wondering if the math added up. It did. The 4 men who came home built lives, had children, planted crops and fixed tractors and sent telegrams, and taught their grandchildren that freedom isn't free, but it's worth the price. And somewhere in France, in a field near Villers-Faussard, wildflowers grow where, in the mood, once rolled. The tank is long gone, scrapped for metal, forgotten by everyone except the men who lived inside her steel skin. But the promise remains. The promise that 5 men made to each other in a Louisiana training camp to fight smart, to protect each other, to refuse to become statistics. 4 kept it. 1 couldn't. And the man who made it carried the weight of that broken promise to his grave with the same quiet strength that he once used to hunt panthers through hedgerows. They built monuments to other heroes. They wrote books about other battles. But in Farmersville, Texas, in a small cemetery where cotton fields meet the sky, there's a simple stone that tells a different story. It says this was a man who refused to fight fair, who loved his crew more than glory, who came home broken and stayed broken so others could heal. It says 258 tanks destroyed 4 lives, saved 1 promise broken, and a lifetime spent living big enough for all the boys who didn't make it. It says, if you're looking for heroes, don't look for the ones who never failed. Look for the ones who failed and kept fighting anyway, who carried impossible weight with dignity, who planted life after harvesting death, who proved that the measure of a man isn't how he destroys, but how he heals. Lafayette Poole never wanted to be remembered. But he earned it. Not for the killing. For the carrying. For the quiet grace of surviving when survival felt like betrayal. And living when living felt like the hardest war of all. If you believe his name deserves to be passed down, share this story. Write his name in the comments below. Tell someone about the farmer from Texas who became the deadliest tank commander in American history not because he loved war, but because he loved the men who fought beside him. Remember him. Not the legend, the man, the farmer, the soldier who just wanted to bring everyone home and spent 50 years learning to forgive himself for the one he couldn't save. That's the real story. That's the harvest that matters.